Welcome to the Let's Get Vulnerable podcast. We have a very special guest with us today, the one and only Karena Dawn. Welcome, Karina.
Hello. Excited to be here. I had you here on the Big Silence podcast, and now we get to flip the mic, and I'm excited.
I'm so excited. And it was so magical to be in person with you and just get to spend that time. I really enjoyed being on your show. Anyone who hasn't listened to that episode should go listen to it. I'm going to put that in the show notes as well. And I just adore your podcast. You do such a good job. You're an incredible interviewer.
Thank
So
you.
thank you again for having me on your show.
Thank you. I appreciate that. Love good feedback. Also take bad feedback, constructive criticism.
Let's talk about you, Karina. You are amazing. You know, as I said in the intro, you are such an advocate for mental health. Not to mention running a company. You do so much, and I would just love to spend some time digging into your story. Like
Mhm.
how did we get here? Um, just the way that you're so passionate about mental health, and I know we share that, and I know that that doesn't just happen, right? It comes from experiences. So talk to me a little bit about your journey. And obviously you wrote the book, The Big Silence. I'm sure we could spend hours, but just whatever you want to share, Karina, I would love to hear from you.
Yeah, so I have my memoir, The Big Silence, and I actually, since I saw you last, I recorded the audiobook. I had been doing it, but I finally finished it. So that is coming
Amazing.
out in February. But yeah, my story, I realized once started sharing my story and where I felt very alone, that so many other people opened up with their stories of their parents, of their own mental health, and that's why I have the big silence, is just to open up those conversations that we're scared to have. And then once you do that, you actually start healing as a community. So I grew up with in the 80s, 90s, and when I was about 11 or 12 years old, my mom was diagnosed with paranoid schizophrenia. And back then, no one was talking about mental illness and what it was. It was the stigma. I mean, we're doing work on the stigma now, but back then, just imagine. And so, with a mother who, without going into much detail, but just um, paranoid schizophrenia, she had delusions, she saw things, she believed things that weren't true, and she shared those messages with me, which as a young kid kind of made me she like brainwashed me in a way, because you always believe what your mother is telling you. Turned me against my father, turned me against so many people. I thought that my father was the devil. It was, it was crazy, and it took me years to unfold the truth. And she was in and out of our household, missing persons for months at a time, homeless for many, many years. And I am just grazing over this. But then, last years of her life, I was taking care of her. But I had to learn very early on how to be independent, how to protect myself, how to be in control of my own life.
Hmm. And obviously, growing up with a childhood like that, I think you find yourself not being able to be as in tune with your own emotions and what's going on with yourself.
Yeah. I mean, I call it my decade of darkness from like 12 to 22. I am a teenage suicide survivor. Thank God. I'm so happy to be here. And that's also a message of why I do the work in mental health, because there is light after this darkness, and there is hope. And I live the life, I'm not saying it's stress free. Life is hard, but I live the life that little Karina never thought she deserved or could create.
I think it's such a powerful message of, I think when we're in those dark places and we're going through it, sometimes we just can't even imagine what life could be like. So
Mhm.
to give that message to anybody out there right now who's struggling, that you really can get through it, not saying that it's easy, but you can move through it. You can have a different life. You are such a beautiful example of that. Um, So when you turned 22, what happened at that point?
So my decade of darkness, let's go back there because that's fun. I turned to drugs. I was going to raves, skipping school, anything to escape, never wanting to go home, just kind of rebellion. That was like full rebellion, not understanding what's going on, having the shame myself as a kid that my mom's missing, but I don't want to talk about it to anyone else because I'll be judged. And then I'm the weird kid in school. It was just really heavy. And so then when my mom was missing for quite a few months, my dad hired a private investigator and found her in California in Santa Monica. And me, being the people pleaser and thinking, what attachment style is that where I can save everyone?
Anxious
Um,
attachment.
Anxious, yes. At that time, I was had an anxious attachment. I thought I could go back and bring mom home, but I ended up in California, and I was like, wow, this is way better than Indiana. And so I ended up moving there 3 months later.
Mm.
And so then while I was there, I continued, I saved, first of all, I was 18, saved up $600 and drove across the country. And I was like, you go, girl. Like, I got $600 and moved into the tiny apartment where my mom was living with a homeless man at the time. And I just like normalized all of this. Like, he was a homeless drunk who beat her, and I would attack him, he would attack me. It was like there's something being raised in chaos, like that environment as an 18-year-old was like normal. Like, I can handle this. Oh, okay. I'll just go punch the dude if he hits my mom, you know? Um, but then she ended up leaving again on a journey with this guy and left me at 18 in the middle of Hollywood. I continued my escapism ways until I was 22 and was like, this is not your life, Karina. There is something greater. It's like that voice that you sometimes push away, but you really should be listening to. And that's where I had my shift. And I went back and was like, when was I my happiest? And it was when I was a kid, and I ran my first half marathon when I was 10 or 11. And I was like, I'm gonna work out again. I remember watching mom work out to Jane Fonda DVDs and looked up to her and was like, I want to do that one day. And so I just went back and did all of the hard work to change my Hollywood nights to surfing in the morning to training for a triathlon to getting certified in personal training to, and it took years. Like, healing is still beginning. Um, Still going on, but I just made that big shift in my life.
Wow, so fitness was a big help for you in terms of finding ways that you could spend your energy and time that brought you joy.
Mhm.
And obviously we get so many natural endorphins, and it can just help us in so many ways. What about the trauma work of releasing past trauma, going through everything that you experienced in your childhood? When did that really start for you?
Oh, man. When I had that moment after when I had that aha moment of this is not how your life is meant to be. That was after a 3-day bender. And so not only was I just like, okay, let me trade my Hollywood nights for being in nature and the ocean. I went into therapy, read every self-help book possible. I changed the friends I was hanging out with as well, which is, your environment is important and always from where you hang out, who you hang out with. So that was the biggest shift, and that took years. I even like I just finished my audiobook for my memoir, and I was reading it again, and my last sentence was it was after my mom passed away, and I was her caregiver for the last 5 years, and I wrote, "And now the healing begins." And you have that interesting story that we talked about too, because your mother, when you were 6,
Mhm.
quote unquote, died, but she was still around for 20 more years, and so you had these 2, like, different like, different mournings, types of mournings. So my mother was actually not my mother as of 12 years old. And then she was really gone when I was 37, 38. No,
Yeah,
actually
I
40.
I relate
Yeah.
to that.
Yeah.
Because there's so much that obviously, you repress for survival, and even things that you dissociated from that maybe that you had forgotten. And there is something about experiencing the death of your mom that I imagine then allowed you to grieve in ways that you hadn't been able to grieve, and maybe even memories that had been repressed. And um yeah, I love that you share that. And I love what you talked about of the healing, it never ends.
Hmm.
You you and I know this. I think there is the beginning. We all, we have to choose it, and it doesn't end.
Well, that's the beautiful sort of thing is I'm 43 and I'm learning of, oh, this is why I experience panic attacks now. Because I correct me if I'm wrong, doctor, but I had to learn how to be in control at such a young age in order to survive. That now, if I'm out of control in a situation, I feel unsafe, which then causes a panic attack. Am I getting that right?
Absolutely.
Am I,
Yeah.
am I learning about
No.
myself? Yeah.
Yeah. I mean, it makes perfect sense, and it is. I'm sure have you've read the book "The Body Keeps the Score." I always think about that book of how much our body
Yeah.
stores, and just it's not like you consciously are going, "Oh, I'm out of control, so let me have a panic attack." This is what was wired for you for survival.
Hmm.
And I think once we know that, then we can have so much compassion, and we can learn how to realign with our more
You know,
calm, selves.
yeah. And I don't know why it took so long for me to connect that. I think I was listening to a different podcast and I was like, oh my gosh, that makes so much sense. Cause I'd be like, why is this happening? But now I'd be like, oh, you're out of control. It's okay. You're safe. And now I can cut those off immediately
Yeah.
and be like, I know why this is happening. You're okay. You're safe. You're in control of you.
I love it. I think there's something about understanding why. As
Mhm.
humans, it is really helpful for us to understand why, so that we can move to that place of acceptance and move to that place of compassion. Because if things are just happening, and we don't know why they're happening, it's harder for us to have that acceptance and compassion. So by going back to your roots, and knowing why it is, it's just really helpful in your healing journey. And just what you said, it's not that it doesn't happen, but now you can respond to it so much differently. um it's just powerful.
Yeah. Always learning.
Always learning, absolutely. Karina, I want to talk with you, if you're okay with it. I would love to talk about love with you, because
Okay.
that's what we talk about a lot on this
Mhm.
show. And I had the pleasure of meeting Bobby. Bobby was
Yes.
just helping us with the tech.
I know. Bobby's out of town. I've been here like man in the house for about a week. So
Yeah, he's an
we love
incredible
Bobby.
partner to you, and I see the relationship you have, and it's like, yes, I mean, it's just you can feel it just being around the two of you. It's a great relationship. Um, what was it like entering into dating relationships after going through all the childhood trauma that you did? And how did you find yourself in such a healthy, loving relationship after surviving everything that you did?
Shocking, right? I'm I just have praise for it every day because number one, I didn't believe in myself and because of what, mental illness is can be genetic. And I never believed in myself. I thought I would always turn out like my mother. So I was just in self destructive mode. You dated me, I will screw you over. I will push you away. Would, all the things like, and learning how to accept love and be loved. I had to relearn that. because when my mother was my everything, and then I learned that everything that she was telling me, and then she was actually schizophrenic, and this was all not the truth. And I had to unravel what was the truth and what wasn't the truth. And my sister and I still talk about things to this day. We're like, was that true or not? Like, it
Yeah.
really messes with you. And then because I loved my mom so much, and then you deal with abandonment. And then I loved her, but she was quote unquote lying to me, but learning that it was actually the disease. So I didn't trust love because love had failed me. And then I got into a few shorter term relationships that weren't great, probably with narcissistic people, and, just attract
Emotionally unavailable. Yeah.
emotionally unavailable, as I was too. And, just really working on myself first. I had to love myself. Like,
Yeah.
that. Like, if you don't love and respect yourself to the highest degree, how can anyone love you the same? And so then I was in a 6-year relationship with someone that I decided to leave, and that was in my 20s. And I finally learned how to love again and trust again. But then I realized that relationship was probably not good for me. And perhaps as I even talk about it now, there were toxic traits that I didn't realize back then, but I was able to love again. But I was also confident enough in myself to see that I didn't need to be in this pattern and it's okay to leave. And it was one of the hardest things to do because I loved him and who he could be.
Hmm.
And as you know, I can't change that. Like, he's got to do his work. It just wasn't working out. So then I had a few other boyfriends for a few years. And then my early 30s, I met Bobby. And at the beginning, I did my thing. I'm like, I don't really want to date. Like, we can casual, but I lived in an apartment in Manhattan Beach, and he moved in below me, and we had mutual friends, and we started hanging out right away. And we basically like lived together. It was only like a lower level, and then I was up on the top level. So it was only 2 apartments in this building. And so we just got to know each other really quickly, and we moved through all of the traumas really quickly. And within 3 months, it was like, no, I want to be with you. And it's like, okay.
Mm.
And learning, like, if someone, and of course, I'm always going through therapy and working on all of the stuff at the same time. And he had also been through a heartbreak with a girlfriend who had cheated on him, and he had lived across town and then wanted to come live at the beach. And we just both had to like surrender and trust each other, which is one of the hardest things for me to do back then. Now I'm like too trusting, but but back then it's like, okay, surrender. Love is possible. Like, let's do this. Let's communicate. Let's talk. And then now we've been together 13 years.
Amazing.
Yeah. I mean, it's believing. And again, I was going through that work on my own of loving myself, believing that I was worthy, you know? And he
Yeah.
had to do the same thing too.
One thing I'm curious about, because I experienced this and I talked to a lot of people, where if you had chaos in your childhood and you had people who were emotionally unavailable and unpredictable in how they would show up in your lives, then finding yourself in a secure relationship that's stable and the person is emotionally available and they want to give you all this love and they want to show up in your life, there can be part of us that goes, this is weird.
Mm.
Do I actually like this person? You can almost feel uncomfortable in the stability, right? As you're
Mhm.
healing. Did you experience that at all with him?
Yeah. I mean, we've been together a while, and I'm not saying, trust me, we've had our times where we're like, this is
Yes.
over.
There's no
We're
perfect relation.
done.
Let's get that out there. There is
Yeah,
no perfect relationship.
absolutely not. And also, because I come from chaos, and like he thought that marriage was supposed to be perfect and you never have disagreements and arguments. And we went through the 7-year itch, and he's like, we argue. I'm like, we're not necessarily arguing. We have different opinions on things and we express them. So It's not like we are two different humans with two different thought processes, and it's okay to disagree. But and it's okay to disagree and have a normal conversation. So there's still, we always come up with stuff like, but then we still, after these years, like, can have deep conversations and really connect. And then we're now, I think we understand, like, we can disagree on something and that's okay. And like getting to that understanding and realize we're not fighting all the time, we're disagreeing, and like having that be the foundation of our arguments, like, this is okay and it doesn't have to blow up into anything. But the question was, did I feel like I was like it could not be real or true?
Yeah, or just trouble accepting love. I think that's kind of what you talked about with the
Yeah.
surrender. Like,
Yeah.
oh, I can accept
I
it.
can. Yeah, I accept it now. In the beginning, yeah, that was probably where I was like, no, in the very, very beginning, where I was like, no, we don't have to be exclusive. I don't need this, because I didn't feel like I deserved it. And then
Yeah.
now I'm like, hell yeah, I deserve it. you know?
Yes. I always think about how sometimes we get stuck in playing the cool girl on the
Hmm.
outside, right? When in the inside we really do want to be loved, but we've just been taught.
Well, yeah, that was, oh no, we don't have to be exclusive. That was little Karina putting her block up to protect herself because she was afraid of love and feeling unworthy. But really, what she wanted was to just be loved exclusively.
Yes.
Yeah.
Exclusively. Yeah. I love it. In case you didn't know, Black Friday has come early. I am offering 50% off. 50% off of the Breakup Academy. This is the course for reconnecting to yourself, building self-trust, letting go of your heartbreak, letting go of past relationships, any past toxic relationship patterns that you've had. This course is designed to get you to that place where you're excited to date and you have an awareness of how to show up as the securely attached version of you. Right now, when you sign up for this course, you're getting 50% off, and you're also getting a ton of amazing bonuses, including the Breakup Academy guided workbook. And this workbook is designed to walk you through the course and give you step by step prompts that will guide you and help you get so much out of this experience. This is a course that I wish I would have had. It's teaching you basics like emotional regulation, but it's also really helping you with clearing out the past, especially with forgiveness and just completely letting go of your past relationships, and also guiding you through how to get intentional about the kind of relationship you want and helping you show up securely attached. This is really some of my best work, and I'm so happy to be able to offer it to you all at 50% off for a limited time for this Black Friday deal. Don't miss it. This is going away in 6 days. So be sure to go grab the Breakup Academy. You can use the link in the show notes. And if you're like, well, I need more information, I want to know what it's about, I also have a masterclass. It's called the So Over It Masterclass, and it's your 3-step guide to getting over your ex and getting excited to date again. It has so much valuable information in the class, and it will also tell you all about the Breakup Academy. So if you're ready to go, just go sign up. But if you need more information, go check out the masterclass, and both of those links will be in the show notes. And I love what you said about conflict. I
Hmm.
always, when I worked with couples, the couples that I worry about are the ones who don't have any conflict. If
Hmm.
if you don't have conflict, that means that you're very separate, that you're actually not very close. When we're close with people, of course we have disagreements. Of course conflict comes up because that's a natural byproduct of being close. So
I
I
mean,
love you reframe that.
yeah, I agree with that too. I used to think, so remember the boyfriend that I had for like 6 years in my 20s? We never argued. And I thought that was like so good. And then we started arguing because I was out being an athlete and triathlete and had transformed my life, and I was still trying to date. an addict who was getting home at 4 a.m. when I was waking up, and he would yell at me and say bad things, and that's when the arguments he would yell at me, and that's the only time. But when he was sober, we would never argue. But then I look back now, I'm like, did we actually like connect? You know? Like,
Yeah. Did you have true intimacy where you were both really open and honest and authentic about who you were, where you were really deeply connecting? Because if you had, then you would have conflict.
yeah, I love that. It's the truth. There should be conflict.
Yeah. So 13 years with Bobby. I love that you mentioned the 7-year itch. We hear that all the time. That's so common. What do
It's
you
real.
do? It's like everyone goes through this. Let's just normalize it. What do you do to keep your relationship exciting?
I mean, Bobby and I definitely have our own interests, which is good for us.
Yes.
To not be so enmeshed with each other. He loves to race cars. I go on solo trips and he's fine with that. And when we come together, like even now we just started the same because when he's out of town, we schedule calls like twice a day. And so that we can sit by ourselves instead of just like calling randomly, be like, okay, what time do you want to talk tonight? And we have realized that when we schedule a call in the morning and in the evening, and if there's something in the middle of the day, texting, and if we need an emergency, we can call. But we schedule these calls that we can really focus on each other when we're apart. And it's really helped us to have even deeper conversations than like if you call 5 times a day and like, hi, what are you doing? Okay. Like we actually talk for a while and our attention is focused on each other. So that's been really good. And yeah, just
I love
having
that. I'm gonna take that because I travel a lot too, and we do a lot of solo stuff. And I do find it's like, oh, hey, I'm walking down the street and I'll call you, but it's not really focused attention. So I love that tip so much.
yeah, and then, it's kind of respectful of each other's space and what we're doing during the day so that then we can really come together in the mornings and the evenings. And yeah, and we allow ourselves, like, if he's like, "Oh, I want to go fly to San Diego for so and so's birthday and go to a football game," I'm like, "Okay." And then, we're spending, I mentioned before we came on, we're going to spend a month in Palm Springs together and we plan fun things and day trips and this and hikes. And so we have this flow and freedom to let each other be and do what we want. And we always just respect each other.
That's so beautiful. I always tell people that when you have secure attachment, it equals freedom, right? You're
Yeah.
secure in the relationship, so then you're free to fully be yourselves.
Yeah. Like I'll be like, hey, Bobby, is it cool if I go to Mexico with my friend Braun? He's like, yeah. I'm like, cool. All right. Like, I think it's such a good place to be if you can be there and secure in a relationship and have that trust and not be anxious.
Absolutely. Absolutely. I love that you guys have your dogs. How many Pomeranians do you have?
5.
5. And he gets to be the dad to the Pomeranians.
Yeah, that's all we have to check on each other. I'm like, "Hey, my friend Braun's gonna be in Mexico. Can you stay home and watch the dogs?" And
Yeah.
he's like, "Yeah, yeah." That's why I have to check in.
You have to coordinate. I love it.
Yeah.
I love it so much. Well, you obviously have just done so much in the health and wellness space with Tone It Up and I mean just all yourself being an athlete. One thing I'm curious about, because I always want to know this from very successful people such as yourself, what do you find to be helpful in terms of daily non-negotiables for taking care of your mind and body?
And it's gonna be a cliche answer. I wake up,
That's fine.
I light a candle, I try to spend some time by myself, and meditate, work out, and very cliche, sauna plunge. But it just makes me feel so good. Even sometimes I also allow myself to sleep in these days. I used to be like 5 a.m. up and at 'em. I've been a 7 a.m. girl lately. And I know that doesn't sound late, but for me to really like put sleep as a priority, I think that sleep is just as important as lifting weights, eating your protein, and getting enough hydration, enough water. So, sleep is a non-negotiable. Moving my body, even if it's, I think today I did a 20-minute workout. Um, and yeah, just those little things because, and I texted Bobby yesterday. I'm like, oh my gosh, I didn't want to work out today, but I did. I meditated and I worked out for 20 minutes, did my sauna plunge, took a shower. I was like, I need to remember how I feel right now. So energized, endorphins going from just having these non-negotiables rather than letting yourself go and jumping right into work or jumping right into taking care of people, jumping right into emails and contracts. And I can easily be the person who can turn the light on and start emails. But I have to, and sometimes I stray away from my own non-negotiables, but I just bring myself right back.
I love the honesty here because I feel like sometimes we hear from people and they're like, this is what I do every single day. And I've been doing it for 5 years. But the reality is we all have those days where it doesn't happen.
Mhm,
And it's okay to not beat yourself up. And I love what you said about remembering how you feel
mhm.
after and just remembering that you are so worthy of feeling that way, which means you're worthy of taking the time to take care of yourself.
Yeah, true. I mean, that is one of the biggest motivators to me is remember how you feel when you do this versus when you don't do it. And then it's like, okay, let's do it.
I agree. I always tell my clients I want you to think about the three core emotions in terms of how you want to feel. And that really can be kind of a North Star for us in our lives. And if we remember how do I want to feel, then it helps us know what are the actions to take so that I feel that way.
Yeah, it's true. It's not like me as a fitness person is waking up, my eyes open, I'm like, let's go. I was at I was just at an event this past weekend and Dr. Gabrielle Lyons was speaking and she's all, you know, who she is,
Yeah.
and all about like protein and strength training and even her and she's in like phenomenal shape. She also said it. She's like, "Do you think I actually wake up and want to work out? No. You just do it."
The honesty. Yeah.
Yeah.
You just know how you're going to feel.
Yeah.
Yeah. It's really one of those areas of life. I love it.
Yeah.
I'm curious, obviously you've been working out a long time. This is kind of my own selfish curiosity here. What has changed for you in terms of what a workout looks like? Is there anything that you've changed over the years?
Yeah. Um, you know, eh, everyone thinks I've just am like hardcore and I'm not. And I even 2020 through 2022, I stopped working out. I was my mother's caretaker. We had, you know what, in 2020, wasn't my healthiest. My mother passed away in 2022. I was sad and didn't get off the couch. And I allowed myself that time and I slowly got back into it. So, you know what I did at this time is I I was introduced to a personal trainer, and to get myself to work out again, I hired a personal trainer. And Sandy, love her. She would say, because I was depressed after my mom, and she would say, "Hey, can you just get in your car and drive to the gym?" I was like, "Yeah, we'll just sit on the couch." And then we'll go from there. And if we feel like working out, we'll work out. If not, we'll just sit and talk. I was like, okay, I can do that. And I freaking love Sandy. And that was 2+ years ago. I started working out with her. Just that little thing of like, can you show up to the mat? Maybe you just sit there. Maybe there's some dumbbells next to them. But I guarantee if you just show up, you're going to start moving. And so to answer the actual question of over time, I mean, I was a triathlete and then very much into yoga, surfing, snowboarding, mountain biking. Like I've gone through all these transitions and I was very into HIIT. Recently, I am more into strength training. I'm back to that and going on hikes. And that's pretty much it. I
Yes.
mean,
I
I
love
think
it.
it's so yeah, like, it's okay. You don't have to be that yoga, Pilates girl your whole life. It's whatever you feel in the season you're in.
This is so powerful because I think sometimes we feel the pressure to have the perfect workout that's going to optimize our time. And instead of saying, how do I just carve out the space and I can listen to what my body needs or what I really want to do?
Yeah. I mean, now I'm into like quick workouts, 20 minutes, 25. Just get in there and do circuits every minute on the minute or just something simple. And there were times in my life, like 6, 7 years ago, where I would walk an hour to the hot yoga studio, do an hour of hot yoga, walk back home. I'm like, I don't have time for 3 hours of working out. I didn't, somehow I made time back then and I probably could now, but that's not what my body is craving right now.
I think this is such a good point of just the power of being tuned in to what your body needs and honoring what that is. And yeah, I definitely can relate of, I used to spend like 3 hours in the gym and I had the perfect plan of the exercises I was going to do. And, it was so planned out. And I do find myself now more of, okay, I'm going to spend 20 to 40 minutes. I'm going to listen to what my body needs. Sometimes it's yoga, sometimes it's lifting, sometimes it's a walk outside. And I'm creating the space, but then I'm honoring what my body needs.
Yeah.
I'm with
Yeah.
you
I
on the
mean,
sleep too, Karina. I slept till 7 a.m. today. Magical.
I know I'm getting better at not like waking up in the middle of the night also, which is amazing. I did this for the first time. I know I'm a meditator, but I'm a bad meditator and I love meditation and I do a little bit every morning, but last night I did a 45-minute meditation.
Wow.
Like, who am I? And
That's amazing. That is
and it was
amazing.
just silence by myself, like, and it was before my evening call with my husband. I was like, I just meditated for 45 minutes. He was like, what? He's like, you go, girl.
That's amazing. I love it.
Yeah,
What's the saying about, I think it's like, if you feel like you don't have time to meditate, you need to
I need
meditate
to.
twice as
Yeah,
long.
yeah. That might have been me last night.
I love it. I love it so much. So you brought something up about grieving the loss of your mom and what grief looked like for you. I lost one of my best friends in 2020, which I talked about on your show. And I'm also familiar with grief and having acceptance of yourself as you go through it. But I'm just really curious for you, what do you feel like has helped you the most through the grieving process?
For me, it was it was an interesting time because I was the first of my friend group to lose a parent.
Mm.
So I feel like there was uh, like some people couldn't understand, so you feel a little bit lonely.
Mhm.
And I laid on the couch a lot, and some people were like, "When are you going to get off the couch?" And I was like, "Grief is not linear. Like this is what I need right now. I need to lay here." What helped me the most when I was ready to get going again, it was a few months before I was ready to like really be myself again. And I don't have any guilt in that. Um,
It
so
takes as
it
long
was,
as it takes.
yeah. And I was talking to a therapist who deals with grief, and she said the first year is you're kind of numb, and then the second year there's this survivor's guilt.
Mhm.
And um, so I was like, okay, I give myself permission. But it was you go back to those things that bring you joy. It's like, okay, Karina, you're gonna go work out again. You're gonna get in nature. You're gonna make plans with friends. You're gonna see people. You're gonna start living life again. What brings you joy? Do those things and force yourself to do them, even at the moments where like you make a plan and you're like, I don't want to do that. I don't want to leave the house. But then just like when you don't want to work out, once you get to that dinner, once you get to that barbecue, once you whatever, meet your friends for a workout, you feel so much better. So it's just pushing yourself to move through the grief and get back to the things that bring you joy. And you can still have that grief and you can still have those moments, you know, that you can still cry, but It just takes you have that willpower to keep going.
Mhm. And I really do think that for me, the acceptance that it's something that never fully goes away, the
Mhm,
loss of someone that you love, but just knowing that it does get easier to carry in
mhm.
some ways.
Yeah, it does. It really
Mhm.
does. So just know
Yeah.
that this too shall
Yeah.
pass, right? We've heard that many times, and this too shall pass.
Yeah. And I don't know if this has been part of your work, but I imagine it has been of using the memory of your mom and using that as part of your fuel, I guess, if you will, in the work that you do and trying to find some connection and meaning to who she was and feeling like you can try to honor her in some ways.
Yeah, so I was with her the last 3 days in hospice, and I told her about the book I was writing. I told her about the big silence and how I, because she never wanted to take her medications, never wanted to admit that she had a mental illness, and she was like, "Because of the stigma." And so her last few days, we talked about it, and I told her the work I'm doing, and she finally said, "Okay." She's like, "You know what, Karina? Um, it's not just my physical health, it is my mental health, and I have a mental illness." And, like, she couldn't until her last days admit to that because of the stigma, so I dedicate The Big Silence to her, to Linda Joy Tompkins, so that people like her don't have to suffer in silence their entire life and be afraid to get treatment, be afraid to ask for help or medication,
Mhm.
because of the stigma. So, yeah, her life has powered me in so many ways, from my strength to do and build a huge company, tone it up, to what I do at the big silence. And I told her on her last days too. I said, "Mom," because she was kept speaking of regret, and I was like, "Don't speak of regret." I said, and regret in terms of like being a mother. And I told her that I am proud of the woman I am today because of you being my mother.
So powerful that I mean, we see this in Viktor Frankl's Man's Search for Meaning, right? When we can find the meaning in our suffering, it really is just so incredibly powerful.
Yeah. She made me one bold, independent, strong woman.
I love it. I love it. Yeah. And I don't know, oh gosh, I feel like I could talk to you for another hour about this. I know we don't have another hour, but um just in some of my own breath work and meditation, and I don't know if you've had these experiences, but being able to connect with her energy in some way or her spirit. Have you experienced that or found that helpful?
Um, I have. There have been some times, where I have felt her here, or with me, and felt her energy, or even, like, after she passed, I would walk through my living room, and there's, like, a TV room over to my right, and multiple times I would look over because I, like, saw her there, which is
Yeah.
interesting. And then, I had a podcast guest on who was a medium, and I had not talked about my mom or anything, but she asked me about, um, hummingbirds. And she's like, "Do you have a hummingbird tattoo?" And I said, "No." She's like, "Anything that's like eternity or something, like, I see a person sitting next to you on the couch, like your mom." And I was like, "Well, I have a tattoo on my back that stands for eternity." And she's like, "Okay, that's it." And then she was like, I just want you to know, like, your mom is sitting right next to you, and she wants you to know that she's proud of you." I started bawling because
Oh,
I told my guest, I was like, "That was the one thing I always wanted my mom to say, and she never did."
that's so powerful.
And then she was like, "You should get a little tiny hummingbird," because my mom loved hummingbirds. And she's like, "You
Oh.
should get a hummingbird tattoo." And so I did. See,
Oh, you have it. Oh my
I
gosh.
drew it, yeah.
Oh, it's
And
gonna
it's
make
like
me
a little
cry if I think about this. Oh my gosh, Karina.
and then So I drew it, and then I have it in this eternity thing around my wrist here.
That's beautiful. Oh my gosh. Amazing. Wow. Yeah, I think I've also had experiences with people who've passed who I loved dearly, and I don't know, I just have found so much healing and peace in having those experiences. So I'm glad you were able to share that as well. So I'm not alone because sometimes I'm like, does anyone else experience this?
I know, and you're like, "Is that real?" Or like, "What's I" so many questions in this universe.
So
I
many
don't know.
questions.
I
So
don't
many
know.
questions. Well, I could just talk to you forever. But we've talked about a lot today. You've been very vulnerable with us, and I just love getting to chat with you. I think one final question I want to ask is, what would you say to someone who's really new to their healing journey? Maybe they're just beginning. What would you want them to know?
It doesn't have to be all or nothing. And on one day or 1 year, it's like, do one little thing that makes you feel good, and then also make a list of, like, 5 things that bring you joy, 5 things that are maybe a goal, whether it's meditation, talk to a therapist, um, join a community, like, things that you know will help you to heal, and just look at that list some days. And some days you might do one thing, some days you might do multiple. I also wanna say, like, with therapy, and there are so many different modalities that we could talk about, it's, like, one of the scariest things to ever go to your first therapy session. But it's, again, the same thing. Um, you can be driving there, or maybe you're doing it virtual. I promise you'll have that same feeling as if you finish that workout when you're done with that therapy session. So, just start, and
Just start.
just start, because how you feel afterwards is it's you deserve it. You'll feel great.
I love that advice. It's true. Just start, just keep showing up. If you decide that you're going to show up for your healing, you've already won. Like you're on the journey, right?
Yeah, absolutely.
So powerful. Well, I've loved having you on the show. Please tell people all the things, how they can connect with you. I'll be putting it all in the show notes, but please tell
Yes.
us.
So, thebigsilence.com and toneitup.com. If you like to work out or you want to get started, we do have a January challenge coming out on January 6th, where we have a few Tone It Up trainers and meditations, and it's really fun. And then, yeah, on Instagram, Karena Dawn, and the big silence.
Amazing. And we'll put it all in the show notes. Very excited about your audiobook as well. I
Oh,
love an
yes.
audiobook. That's
Yes.
amazing.
Yeah.
So
I'm
we will
excited.
be letting people know about that. Thank you so much, Karina. I just
Thank
adore you
you.
and your mission.
Thank you. Back at you.
And everyone listening, of course, we are both wishing you high self worth and great relationships. Until next time.